In the shadowy corridors of 16th century England, a secret war was being waged. A war not of armies clashing on open fields but of whispers, codes, and conspiracies. At its heart were two queens, bound by blood, but divided by faith and ambition. One, Elizabeth I, the Protestant Virgin Queen of England. The other, Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic claimant to the English throne, held captive for nearly 2 decades. For years, Elizabeth had walked a tightrope. To execute Mary, a fellow anointed monarch, was unthinkable. It would set a terrifying precedent and could ignite a holy war across Europe. Yet to let her live was to harbor a constant threat, a living symbol for every Catholic plotter who dreamed of overthrowing the Tudor regime. Elizabeth needed proof, not just suspicion, not just rumor, but cold, hard, undeniable evidence of treason, a smoking gun, and she had just the man to find it, or if necessary, to build it. Enter Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's principal secretary, her spymaster, her Moor. He was a man forged in the fires of religious persecution, a staunch Puritan who had witnessed the horrors of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in Paris. To Walsingham, Mary was not just a political rival, she was a cancer at the heart of the Protestant state. He saw plots everywhere, and he was determined to excise them with surgical precision. Walsingham was no mere he was an architect of downfall, a master manipulator who understood that the most effective trap isn't one you spring, but one your enemy willingly walks into. His goal was not simply to uncover a plot, but to nurture one, to guide it, and to let it grow until it was so treasonous, so damning, that even Elizabeth could no longer hesitate. He would give Mary enough rope, and he was confident she would hang herself with it. The stage for this deadly play was Chartley Hall, a moated manor house in Staffordshire. It was here that Mary was imprisoned, isolated from the world, or so she thought. Walsingham knew that to make his trap work, he needed to control the flow of information. He needed to create a secret channel, a pipeline through which Mary could communicate with her supporters, a channel that he alone could monitor. The key to this was a seemingly innocuous part of Mary's daily life, her beer delivery. Every week a local brewer would deliver barrels of ale to the household. It was the perfect Trojan horse. Walsingham needed a courier, someone who could gain the trust of both the French embassy, the hub of Catholic plotting, and Mary's isolated court. He found his man in Gilbert Gifford. Gifford was a young, cunning Catholic gentleman, seemingly loyal to Mary's cause. He had the perfect cover, but in reality he was Walsingham's double agent, a man playing a deadly game for his own survival. Gifford's method was ingenious. He would receive letters for Mary from the French ambassador, seal them in a small waterproof tube, and conceal it within the hollowed-out bung of a beer barrel. The brewer, a man secretly on Walsingham's payroll, would then deliver the barrel to Chartley Hall. A servant, also in on the scheme, would retrieve the tube and pass it to Mary. Her replies would travel back the same way. It was a seemingly foolproof system, but every single letter, coming and going, made a crucial detour. Before reaching its final destination, each one was intercepted by Walsingham's agents. The wax seals were expertly broken, the contents copied, the seals meticulously replaced, and the letters sent on their way, with neither Mary nor her correspondents ever knowing their darkest secrets were being laid bare. Walsingham was now reading Mary's mail, but there was a problem. The most important letters, the ones containing the true poison, were not written in plain English or French. They were written in code. Mary, a veteran of conspiracy, used a complex nomenclature cipher. It was a sophisticated system that used a mix of symbols, numbers, and Greek letters to represent the alphabet, as well as code words for key people and places. 40 was Elizabeth, 50 was Walsingham, and there were symbols for conspiracy, assassination, and invasion. To an untrained eye, it was gibberish. To Walsingham, it was a locked door standing between him and the evidence he craved. To open it, he needed a key, or rather a keymaker. That man was Thomas Phillips, a linguist of prodigious talent, a master of ciphers, and the final, crucial piece of Walsingham's machine. Phillips was the NSA of the 16th century. Working from a room in Walsingham's London house, he would receive the intercepted coded letters. The work was painstaking, a torturous mental exercise of frequency analysis, pattern recognition, and educated guesswork. Slowly, methodically, Phillips began to chip away at the code. He identified the most common symbols, likely representing vowels like E and A. He found patterns, deciphered a word here, a phrase there. He built a key, letter by letter, symbol by symbol. Every decrypted message was another piece of the puzzle, bringing Walsingham closer to his goal. Meanwhile, a new fiery plot was taking shape, centered around a wealthy and fanatical young Catholic named Anthony Babington. Babington and his circle of friends were impatient. They were tired of waiting. They envisioned a grand, 6-part enterprise, a Spanish invasion, a popular uprising, and, at its core, the assassination of Queen Elizabeth. Babington, bursting with misguided zeal, needed the blessing of the woman he hoped to place on the throne. He needed Mary's approval. On July 6, 1586, using Gifford's beer barrel channel, Babington wrote the letter. It was the culmination of all his plotting, a detailed explosive document outlining the entire conspiracy. He wrote of foreign armies, of freeing Mary, and, most critically, of the dispatch of the usurper, the plan to murder the Queen of England. This was it. The letter was a death warrant, but the question was, for whom? The letter arrived at Chartley Hall, but first it passed through the hands of Thomas Philips. As he painstakingly decoded Babington's message, the full, horrifying scope of the plot became clear. This was more than just talk. It was a concrete plan for regicide. Philips, ever the professional, added a chilling, personal touch. On the gallows-shaped paper flap of the letter, he drew a small sketch of a gallows, a private note to Walsingham indicating that they now had enough to hang the plotters. The letter was then resealed and delivered to Mary. Now, everything rested on her reply. Walsingham and his team waited, holding their breath. Would Mary be cautious? Would she warn Babington of such a dangerous and treasonous plan, or would she endorse it? For 10 long days, there was silence. Then, on July 17th, the brewer made his return journey from Chartley Hall. Hidden inside another barrel bung was Mary's response. The letter was rushed to Philips. The candle burned late into the night, as he once again applied his key to her complex cipher. As the symbols gave way to words, a cold sense of triumph must have filled the room. Mary had not only approved of the plot, she had embraced it. She discussed the logistics of her own rescue and, crucially, gave her blessing to the assassination. She wrote, "When the forces shall be in place, and the 6 gentlemen ready, then shall they set to work." The 6 gentlemen, the assassins, it was the smoking gun, the undeniable proof. Walsingham finally had it. The carefully constructed trap had snapped shut. The words lay on his desk, decoded and damning. Mary, Queen of Scots, had just signed her own death warrant. The secret war of spies and ciphers was over. The bloody and public conclusion was about to begin. The trap was set. The bait, a decoded letter promising liberation, lay before a desperate queen. Mary, Queen of Scots, imprisoned for nearly 2 decades, saw her chance. She picked up her pen, and with every stroke sealed her own fate. This is a story of how a single, coded reply brought down a monarch. Last time we saw spymaster Francis Walsingham and his brilliant codebreaker Thomas Philips intercept a secret message to Mary from a young Catholic nobleman, Anthony Babington. They had cracked the complex cipher, revealing a plot to assassinate Queen Elizabeth I and place Mary on the English throne. But Walsingham needed more. He needed Mary to condemn herself. So, he let the letter through, and waited. Now, locked away in Chartley Hall, Mary composed her reply. Her situation was dire. Her health was failing, her hope dwindling. This plot was her last gamble. In her coded response to Babington, she didn't just approve of the plan, she actively shaped it. She discussed the logistics of a foreign invasion, the need to secure her own escape, and, most damningly, she gave her explicit consent to what she called the dispatch of the usurper, the assassination of her cousin, Queen Elizabeth. The letter was a masterpiece of treason, written in a cipher she believed was unbreakable. It was everything Walsingham had been working towards for years. When her secret courier carried the message out of Chartley Hall, it went straight into the hands of Walsingham's waiting agents. It was then delivered to Thomas Philips, the master codebreaker, for its final fatal alteration. Philips wasn't just a genius with codes, he was a master of deception. After deciphering Mary's incriminating words, he saw an opportunity to not just trap the Queen, but to obliterate the entire conspiracy in one fell swoop. With a skilled hand, he carefully resealed the letter. But before he did, he added a postscript, a small but devastating request forged in Mary's own cipher. The addition was simple. "I would be glad to know the names and qualities of the 6 gentlemen which are to accomplish the designment." He was asking Babington to list every single one of his co-conspirators. It was a brilliant, ruthless move. Babington, believing the request came from the Queen he sought to crown, would eagerly oblige, handing Walsingham a complete list of every traitor involved. As a final, chilling touch, Philips drew a tiny sketch on the letters seal a small gallows, a personal signature and a grim prophecy of what was to come. The doctored letter was then sent on its way to the unsuspecting Babington. The trap had sprung. Anthony Babington received Mary's letter, his heart soaring with the belief that his queen endorsed his plan. He replied enthusiastically, providing the very list of names Philips had requested. With both Mary's authorization and the conspirators' identities in hand, Walsingham had everything he needed. The hammer fell swiftly. In a series of coordinated raids, Babington and his fellow plotters were rounded up. Their trials were swift, the evidence undeniable, their fates were sealed. But the main prize was still at large. In late August 1586, Mary's chambers were stormed, her papers were seized, her secretaries arrested, and she was informed that she would stand trial for high treason. The trial was set for Fotheringham Castle, a grim, imposing fortress in the English Midlands. A commission of over 30 of the most powerful lords in England was assembled to judge a fellow monarch. It was an unprecedented event. Mary, ever the Queen, initially refused to recognize the court's authority. "I am a queen," she declared, "and not subject to the laws of a foreign land." But she was given a stark choice: participate and defend herself, or be tried and convicted in her absence. She relented. Facing her accusers, Mary was formidable. She argued passionately, denying any knowledge of an assassination plot. She claimed the letters were forgeries, a conspiracy crafted by her enemies, specifically by Walsingham, whom she stared down in the courtroom. All of this, she charged, is the work of Monsieur de Walsingham for my destruction. It was a dramatic confrontation. But Walsingham was prepared. He rose and calmly denied the accusation, stating, "God is my witness that I have done nothing unbecoming of an honest man." Then, the prosecution presented its irrefutable evidence: the intercepted letters, the decoded transcripts of her own words, and the confessions of the now executed Babington conspirators. The postscript, Philip's brilliant forgery, had done its work, implicating everyone beyond a shadow of a doubt. Mary's defense crumbled. The verdict was inevitable: guilty. But sentencing a queen to death was not the same as executing a common traitor. The political fallout would be immense. For months, Queen Elizabeth hesitated. She was torn. Executing Mary, an anointed queen, and her own cousin would set a dangerous precedent. It could incite rebellion at home and war with Catholic powers abroad, like Spain and France. She feared making Mary a martyr, a symbol for her enemies to rally around for centuries to come. Elizabeth's counselors, led by Walsingham and William Cecil, relentlessly pressured her. They argued that as long as Mary lived, Elizabeth's own life was in danger, and the stability of the entire kingdom was at risk. The Babington plot was not the first conspiracy in Mary's name, and it wouldn't be the last. Parliament petitioned for the execution. The nation held its breath. Finally, after agonizing for nearly 4 months, Elizabeth yielded. On February 1, 1587, she picked up a pen and signed her cousin's death warrant. Yet even then, she was tormented by the decision. She later claimed she had been misled, that she had given instructions for the warrant not to be dispatched. But it was too late. The machinery of the state was in motion, and it would not be stopped. The warrant was sent to Fotheringham Castle. On the evening of February 7, 1587, Mary, Queen of Scots, was told to prepare for her death the following morning. She spent her final hours in prayer, writing letters, and distributing her belongings to her loyal servants. There was no fear, only a profound sense of dignity and resignation. She was ready to play her final part, the Catholic martyr. On the morning of February 8, she entered the great hall of Fotheringham Castle, where a black-draped scaffold had been erected. She walked with a regal grace, comforting her weeping attendants. She wore a severe dress of black satin, but underneath, she had made a final symbolic statement. As she stood on the scaffold, her ladies-in-waiting helped her remove the outer black garments, revealing a petticoat and bodice of deep crimson, the liturgical color of Catholic martyrdom. In the stark, silent hall, the color was a shocking, defiant blaze of red. She forgave her executioner and prayed aloud in Latin. Her last words were, "Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit." She knelt, placing her head upon the block. The axe fell. The Tudor dynasty had secured its future, but at a terrible cost. The execution of a queen by another queen sent shockwaves across Europe, changing the rules of power forever. Mary's death did not end the threat to Elizabeth, but it marked a point of no return, a brutal, solemn act from which there was no turning back. Thank you so much for watching this 2-part series. The story of Mary, Queen of Scots, is one of the most compelling tragedies in history, and the Babington plot is a masterclass in espionage. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the most dramatic moments of the past. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.